Bill and I have been friends for just about 50 years. We met in college. So it is my pleasure and very honored to speak at Bill's celebration of life. Mr. Bill Harlin, AKA Squat or Bald-Headed Little Bastard. I asked Chase if it would be, if the celebration of life was formal, informal, and of course Chase laughed and said, oh hell no, my dad would just about die if everybody had to get dressed up in a tie and come to this thing. So I'm glad to see everybody pretty much informal. Just want to do some reminiscing stories like Mr. Chambers did of Bill and I growing up after college, in college, after college. And of course they were all pretty much alcohol related. The first time I really got to know Bill was in college. We were in the Beta fraternity house. And we came up with this idea, well, let's go up to Evanston, Wyoming, because you had to go there to get, 3.6 beer instead of 3.2 beer. Right. So we head out on a Friday, and all the fraternity brothers and everything, they give us all their money to buy a beer and everything. Yeah, well, we'll be back at 6. Well, midnight comes and Bill and I come rolling in. After spending about 8 hours playing pool and drinking beer in Evanston, we finally made it back. And another thing we did in college was his dad had a house in Keno Bay in Mexico. And I know several of the people here, looking at Jeff Mangum for one, we all
I'm over here,
experienced. We all experienced the Keno Bay thing. And one time was when we'd gone out to the bars and driving back to the house. I gave Bill a bunch of crap. Said, "There's a cop behind you. You better hide." So Bill, all of a sudden, he's as a station wagon. He jumps over the curb down onto the beach, and he's cruising down the beach. He throws his drink at me and says, "Hold this." Of course, there was no cop. And he proceeds to pull in, and he was all upset because he scraped the car on the gate and knocked the gate down. So he was kind of upset about that. But Bill was my best man in both my weddings. And together with my second wife here, we did a lot of trips together. Cancun, Cabo, Costa Rica a couple of times, New Orleans. I don't know, and then we'd get together several times a year, play golf. He'd come to Arizona, I'd come back up to Salt Lake, play golf. But there was some pretty hilarious stories. One was in Cancun. We went on our kids were with us, my 2 girls and Chase. We went on a bar hopping trip on a bus, and which we all proceeded to really drink a lot. And it was time to go, and of course Bill and I were the little kids. Let me back up a little bit, because Becky and my wife Esther always said that when we get together we act like little kids, like we haven't seen each other for a while. So this was part of it. And it was time to go. The cabs came. Kids would go, "Come on, Dad and Bill, let's get in the car." So they opened the door. We'd get in and we'd scoot out the other side before trying to go get another drink. That was one bad story. Costa Rica, Esther and I got married there the first time we went to Costa Rica, and there was a flight of stairs had to be 50, 75 stairs straight down. And Bill managed to make it down all the stairs without beating, rolling, whatever. And he gets down to the flat part. I guess offset him a little bit. Down he goes into the cage. Next day in the morning before the wedding, he's got Band-Aids on. What happened? Becky said, well, he made it all the way down to the bottom there and biffed it. Then another brilliant thing we did, we used to go to San Francisco, Napa. It seemed like it was about every October. And we'd stay in Union Square in San Francisco. One morning the girls said, well, we want to go down to the wharf. Bill and I, no, we're going to walk down. And if you're familiar with that, Union Square is a little bit of a walk. Fortunately, it's all downhill. So they took the trolley or get a cab. Well, Bill and I came up with a brilliant idea started walking. Let's go in, every bar we see, we're gonna go in for and have a beer. 7 hours later, we show up at the wharf. Hi! Another brilliant thing we did. And then Bill had a foosball table in his basement, so every time we'd come up to Salt Lake, we'd go down into this basement and play foosball. And the girls would be upstairs just hearing us swearing at each other, and Bill would get mad, and one time he kicked a hole in the wall, which incidentally, Becky, it's still there, I know. But there was a couple of things that really got to Bill. One was when four of us go out to dinner, we just split the food bill. And if it had an odd number like 100.03 instead of 100.02, we just split it. And Bill would really get irritated if he got the bill that was a penny more than mine. It just frosted him to no end. I think Chambers had a similar story. He hated losing that 75 cents or something. If his bill was 1 penny more than mine, that was terrible. But the icing of the cake was our second trip to Costa Rica. Chase, Bill and I were at the bar chatting, and then we're talking to this elderly man, not that we weren't elderly. And the guy said, well, how nice. 3 generations sitting here. Bill, myself, and Chase. To this day, I still love it. But when you met Bill, you were really immediately impressed with the friendliness and his willingness to carry on a conversation with you. If you didn't like Bill, then I think you really had a serious problem with yourself. Just such a genuine person. Bill was a man of intelligence, integrity, and quick-witted. He was very successful with Harlin Construction Company and grew a great reputation within the industry. Bill was a great provider to his family, loved hanging out with his son Chase and Becky. Later in life, he became addicted to the game of golf, as he loved those $1 bets. He couldn't stand to lose those $1 bets on the golf course. He also thoroughly enjoyed the brief time he spent with his grandkids, and I'm sure he left such a good impression on them. Even though they're young, they're going to remember him the rest of his life. I mean, how can't you? He's just such a wonderful human being. Becky and Chase, you're very fortunate to have such a wonderful and caring husband and father. If everybody in the world was like Bill Harlin, the world would certainly be a better place. Bill had a tremendous impact on my life because of the man he was. And I'm going to miss the best friend that I ever had. God bless you, Bill, and rest in peace. Okay.
Good on sound? Well, okay. I tend to talk loud, so I'm going to make sure the sound is good. Sorry about that. And as you can see, what I had to deal with all these years with Greg and Dave, it was a lot. It was a lot. For those of you that don't know me, hopefully you do by now, I am Chase Harlin. I am William Chase Harlin. I apologize. William Chase Harlin. Son of Bill and Becky. So growing up with my dad, it was really awesome. He was so inspiring. He just such an accomplished human being. And a lot of people did not know that about my dad. They really didn't. So many of the buildings around this area he built. He did that. And you would never know it because he didn't want to tell you. He didn't care. He was a humble human being. He worked really, really hard to provide for his family, as well as my mother. She did too. And that's something that when I was growing up, I always looked up to. And he had this amazing work ethic. And he was able to get that from his father, Senior. And his family was important to him. Really, really important. He learned to be kind from his mother, Mary Lou. He got a little bit of sass from his older sister, Barbara. And he learned to be warm and compassionate from his youngest sister, Kath. And his family meant the world to him. It absolutely did. And when I was a kid, I just saw him working so hard. He worked his ass off, man. He worked really hard. And so I didn't get to see these glimpses that Dave and Greg talked about when I was a kid. He hid them from me. Every once in a while I get it. Every once in a while. But it wasn't until about 10 years old, it was the first time I got to see him kind of let loose a little bit. We went to Disney World as a kid. And there was a area of Disney World called the Epcot Center. I don't even know if it's still around. It might be, but at the time, yeah, it's still there, right? I'm glad you didn't shut it down. At the time, it was really cool because they had different countries. You go around and you could get food, alcohol, little knickknacks. And sure enough, my dad wanted to try them all out. He wanted to see what it was about. So he went to every single one. Yep. And sure enough, at the end, we got to Germany. And I didn't know what drinking was at the time, really. I just kind of was, oh, Dad's getting drinks at all these places. That's cool. Whatever. But we got to Germany. And he took the drink, lady handed it to him, and took it down. He kind of looked at her and said, well, what was that? She goes, sir, you're not supposed to do that. That was a cup of Jägermeister. And as you can imagine, in that moment, he was out. He was gone. The day was pretty much over. And I remember I was sitting there, and I'm 9, 10. He's talking to me. I don't know what the hell he's saying. He's talking about wars, hiding in bushes because he's afraid of my mom. He's like, she's going to find me. I'm like, she is right there, man. She can see what you're doing. And it was really, man, it was really cool to see him do that because at the time he didn't want to loosen up. And he did. He did loosen up. He eventually he loosened up so much that he allowed us to get a dog shortly thereafter. And, my dad did love dogs when he was younger, but man, at that age, he was like, I know what's going to happen. We're going to get a dog. I'm going to have to take care of it. You guys aren't going to do anything. It's going to be terrible for me. And my mom and I, obviously we won this argument because it's my mom and I. We were going to win no matter what at that point. So we ended up getting a dog. And we went to go pick him up, and the irony of it all was they became best buddies. Of course they did, because why wouldn't they? He took that dog everywhere. He took him on walks. He sat next to him at the table. He would feed him table scraps. He did everything that you're not supposed to do with the dog because he was my dad, and it was his way of showing us, like, this is how I earn affection, is I just throw a steak on the floor and he'll do it. He loved that dog so much. He really did. And there was a moment where, my mom had asked us, she had taken him to the vet, and my dad and I were home. And she had asked us to pick him up. And so we did. And we went down there and we picked up Dockers, and the lady brought him out. She said, here you go. The dog kind of looked at us, and we looked at the dog. I'm like, come on, let's go. The dog just kind of sat there. And I was like, is everything okay? Like, that's weird, he's not coming. She's like, yeah, we have a little procedure, it's fine. Don't worry about it, it's fine. Okay, get the dog in the car. Same thing, I'm used to the dog just like admiring my dad and licking his face and being all happy, wagging his tail, and the dog just sat in the back and did nothing, just kind of sat there. Get him home, comes inside, and he just sits there in the laundry room. Eventually my mom came home and asked us, because she was worried, said, hey, did you pick up Dockers? Like, everything good? I'm like, yeah, he's just in the laundry room. It's being a little weird, no big deal. It wasn't within 2 seconds that my mom looked at us and said, that's not our fucking dog. It was not the dog. No, it was the wrong dog. It was the wrong dog. It was the wrong dog, but my dad just, and in the moment, he kind of looked at me and said, all right, well, let's go back and get the right one. So, and that's what was so great about my dad, like in those moments, he was just calm, right? He was calm, and there was a lot of things that happened in his life that he had to go through, and he just went through it. He was inflappable. He kept his composure so many times. My dad's life was planned. Every item of his life was planned out. I remember the summer before my senior year of high school, he had come to me, and I was very proud of him, but he came to me and said, hey, I'm going to sell the business. I'm tired, I'm done. It's been a lot, and I'm just ready to spend more time with you and your mom and the family. And I was proud of him. I said, yeah, you earned it. You earned it, big fella. You did. But then I also thought to myself, this is great. I would love to spend a lot of time with my mom and dad my senior year of high school. I said, no. I'm like, this is the time that you're choosing to do this? Like, I want nothing to do with it this moment, Yeah, we had a plan for everything, but at the time, I didn't realize it, but eventually that would be the catalyst to me honestly seeing that he would become my best friend. And, our relationship just blossomed at that point. We went on trips with each other. We went on cruises. We went to visit our friends in Arizona, and we just had such a good time. We did everything together. We tailgated, and good Lord, did we tailgate. Oh my gosh, I'm sure every single one of you here has been to that party, and it was a lot. And it was weird because I got to see my dad evolve as a person. He became this social butterfly that wasn't him before. I would watch him form these relationships with my best friends, and it was incredible. And I would get jealous. I'm like, I'm here, like I'm over here. But he loved talking to my friends, the people that I grew up with, that I knew my whole life. And subsequently, I had the same relationship with his friends, people that he grew up with his whole life with. And it was an amazing moment and time of our lives that we got to do all this with him. And, as years went on, I ended up moving to Arizona. And it was tough. I remember telling him. I remember how I was worried about telling him because I didn't want to disappoint him. I built it up to being something that it wasn't. And immediately he told me, of course, if that's what makes you happy, I support you. And that's what mattered to him. And I thought that things would change. I was worried about it. And it didn't. We talked every single day. We laughed, and I told him stories, and it was incredible. He spoke at my wedding to my beautiful wife, Lael. He was there for my kids when they were born, Poppy and Walker. Sorry they had to leave. It's nighttime. You didn't want to deal with that, I promise. But he was there for that. He was there for every moment in my life that mattered to me. And, when I left, I would come home a lot. Because I did miss home and I miss seeing him. And nothing changed. I still got to come home and I got to go to the beer 30s. I got to occasionally, crash a glass of wine on a Thursday. But the thing that kept my dad and I together the most was golf. I know you're probably sick of hearing about golf, but he golfed a lot. But it was golf. And I come home and I got to golf with his friends and his crazy golf group, the Swingin' Richards. They're here today, I promise you. You're going to know. and he would do the same. He'd come visit me and golf with he'd come out and golf with my friends and be with my golf group. And everything stayed the same. And as later on, I remember things changed with this diagnosis. And it got harder, And I remember the last time I golfed with him in Arizona, I didn't think he was going to do it, but he did, because at the time he was going through this crazy clinical trial, and he was like, his hands were bright red, it made him hot, and it was miserable. And he's like, well, I'll go to Arizona. I'm like, well, heat is really bad for you right now, man. And it's over 100. This is not a good idea. He's like, oh, I'm gonna do it. I'm like, okay. So I'm getting the car ready and got the golf clubs in and waiting on him. And here he comes, walking out the front door. And this guy looks like he's going skiing. He is covered from head to toe. He's got pants, long sleeve shirt. He's wearing these golf clubs that are meant for winter golf. It's literally meant for rain and snow. And I'm staring at him like, what are you doing? He's like, we're gonna go golfing. It's gonna be fun. So we went, and there was no way I was gonna be able to convince him not to, and we went. And we got through about 9 holes, and he was hurting, man. He could barely grip the club. He was tired. He was dealing with a leg issue or something random, nothing. I remember I told him, hey, let's finish up. Let's get a beer, get lunch. It's done. It's okay. No one cares. You didn't need to prove anything anyway. And I remember he pulled me in and he told me. He said, this cancer is going to get me at some point. It will. But what I will not let it do is take away the things that I love to do. And he refused it. He refused it.